And you're clear.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us again. We are wrapping up day 4 of XicanIndie FilmFest 23. My name is Molly Gallegos, and I just want to real quick thank our XicanIndie collaborators, KUVO 89.3 FM, Rocky Mountain PBS, the Consulate General of Mexico, and Media Arts Santa Ana. Thank you all so much for your help. Just a reminder that we have a summer internship coming up. So if you are, or if you have, or if you know a high school student who is just going to be sitting on the couch bored, send them to us. We have a fast-paced, and fun summer internship experience. So head on over to www.suteatro.org. Our application is due the 18th, so get on it. We are here today to talk to the director of Border South. And so I'm going to pass it over to Felicia, who will introduce him. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Molly. I am Felicia Gallegos Perez, and welcome to our Platica today for Border South. I will be introducing our guest shortly. I wanted to have another couple of notes on programming. I wanted to let you know about some more upcoming events for Su Teatro. Do you love homemade tortillas fresh off the comal? Wish you knew how to make them? Well, now's your chance. Su Teatro's Cultural Preservation Series will present a tortilla making class from the comfort of your own cocina, Sunday, May 16th at 11 a.m. Details are forthcoming, and you will be able to sign up for that class soon at suteatro.org. Also, the 7th ever WordFest and Artist of Color Summit is coming up. It kicks off next Friday, April 16th at 1 p.m. with the Film Producers Academy workshop given by our partners Media Arts Santa Ana. This year's festival will feature new work in progress by artistic director Anthony J. Garcia, The Sun Serpent by Jose Cruz Gonzalez, and some other very exciting events. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we are joined today with the director, producer, and cinematographer Raul Paz Pastrana from Border South. I would now like to hand it over to our facilitator of this conversation today, Daniel Salazar. Take it away, Danny.
Thank you, Valerie. Bueno, bienvenidos. Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and I want to congratulate the Su Teatro staff for a really wonderful festival. And I guess this is our closing Platica, so let's get right to it. We're very happy to have with us, actually in Denver, back in Colorado, the director, producer, and cinematographer extraordinaire from the wonderful documentary Border South, Frontera Sur, as well as Night Shift, a short film that showcases here at Denver and an emergency. I don't know what is she called? I forgot, but she's a wonderful short portrait, very much in time with the pandemic that we're under. But let me introduce Raul. Raul, can you say hello and give us a little bit of introduction to yourself?
Yeah. So I'm Raul Paz Pastrana. I'm originally from Mexico, Chihuahua, from a little town of the mountains of Chihuahua, and I migrated to Colorado in the 90s. And I grew up in the mountains of Colorado by a little town named Carbondale. I went to school for Collins. I lived in Denver for many years, working as a community organizer. I worked for SEIU. I worked for Centro Humanitario. I worked for DRAP, Rights for All People, which no longer exists. And then I moved to New York to learn about documentary filmmaking 10 years ago. It was 10 years ago last summer. So after 10 years, I have a lot of family and friends here, so I come here a lot anyways. But after 10 years in New York, me, my wife, and my kid moved back. And I'm here. In New York, that's where I made most of my films. Although I made some films in Colorado before. Although they were, as Daniel, you've been a filmmaker from here, it's really hard to make films here in Colorado outside of California, New York, cloud. And in New York, I was able to, actually New York was like the first, I didn't know about you, Daniel, but in New York, in my experience, New York was the first time I saw a Latino being directing films. and because here most of the jobs were taken by white directors, so it was very very empowering to see that. Even though most of them were Puerto Rican or Dominican, but there were some Mexicans too, I admit. So so then after 10 years there, I come back, and I over there I made a lot of shorts. And then my first feature was Border South, which is about Central Americans crossing through Mexico, through Mexico and in the U.S. Mexico border in Sonora and Arizona. And that one took me 5 years to make. And it's about the immigrant experience, quotidian days, what is that makes them keep going on this dangerous trail. That's what the movie essentially is about.
Well, it's a very strong film, and has some extraordinary, visuals to it. One of the things that I particularly liked about it is you really get that kind of streetwise or ground level feeling to being there, and you also use a pretty low camera angle quite a lot. Is that to kind of help that along? But it really gives you a feeling that you're kind of there sharing, trotting the trail. How did you first get involved with this particular subject in this film? As you said, you worked on it for 5 years. Could you talk about how you first, decided that this was a subject that you wanted to focus on, and how you finally were able to complete this project, and how it's worked out for you, the kind of audience response that you've gotten?
Yeah, well, first I do want to address so that's very the camera angle and the type of lenses that I use were very intentional. I tried to always do a wide lens, and in the low angle as much as I could, because when you're on the trail you're moving a lot, and tripod shot was intentional, just to show the power dynamics. It's there, your story, and I try to put them on that at that level. The migrants are the main protagonists, right? So I did as much as I could on the low angle to show that power dynamic with the composition. So I'm glad that you picked from that. I was making a lot of shorts in New York, and a lot of the stories I'm from Mexico originally, so I have a lot of friends that migrate all the time. And here in the US, I met a lot of people from El Salvador, especially here in Colorado, El Salvador, and Honduras. And hearing their stories of how they crossed, and even family members hearing their stories of how they crossed and documented, there was always something missing on the films that I saw. Not that those films were bad, but the way they portrayed the migrant experience to me was very. Some of them were very paternalistic, but some of them were very focused on the victimization, on the on showing the migrants as humiliated and hunted. And the stories that I was hearing from friends, families, and family friends was more like they had some sort of humor in it. They talk about how they walk with the coyote, and it was like sort of like in a way that the way they talk about the strategy with a little bit of humor, more of them being able to zigzag criminals and immigration, and how smart they are by being able to do this. They talk about the amazing time they had on the trail, sometimes sharing food, because those are the things that kept them going through this, hard trail. The North American migrant trail might not be the most deadly because of nature, but it's the most deadly because of humans, especially because of what Mexico has been doing since the Obama administration until now. And then obviously in the US-Mexico border, what has been happening since the 90s. So I wanted to focus on that. I wanted to give a voice to those little moments that I was hearing. And so I found this archaeologist, Jason De Leon, who's a Mexican-American anthropologist, very well known. He wasn't that well known when I found him. Right now he's a MacArthur genius and all that, but when I found him, he was just coming up. And the way he was talking, I saw a talk on YouTube. He was talking about what he found on the desert. And he was talking about
was this around like 2014? Was this around like 2014 because you worked on the film for 5 years?
I saw this video around 2013. Yeah. And it was awesome because he was just saying, look at how they fix their shoes. It's amazing. Instead of being like poor immigrants, look what they have to do. He was like, fuck, these people are super smart and look what they're doing. It's ingenious what they're doing. So I talked to him and we start talking about how we wanted to make the film. And he is in the film.
Right. Yeah. No, he's really very strong. I mean, I saw those as some of the most poignant things, and you have some bizarre images that are just so. The image of he's doing right as a way for them to have to be able to look at how the body decomposes, or in the case of the pig, is eaten, and then the rest, all of the material, in terms of their clothing and everything else. So that's such a bizarre image, to see that, and then the camera. I guess is it like a field camera that was there that captures the vultures? So they were recording that particular shot. Yeah. So he does some really, very, very strong work, and you're right. He's dealing, with the material, culture of what happens there. I think was really one of the strong elements, and his approach as a scientist, but you still, feel the enormous kind of compassion. Can you talk about the relationships that you created with the subjects, of your film, and also, one of the things that was so refreshing is you're more hanging out with them in your film, as you were saying in the other films. They're more kind of, like the subject, and that's so important that we get, that out, because you then do, appreciate the humanity, the humor, the resilience, of the journey, and also just, the simple pleasures of life and the easy rapport. I'm thinking about the scene where they're talking about La Llorona and stuff, and he's flirting in there. Could you talk about how you were able to develop those relationships and get that kind of candor?
Yeah. So, Jason, obviously, him and I are friends. He's producer of the film, although mostly a name, because once we start shooting, he just was hands off. And Gustavo, who is the Nicaraguan that you're talking about. So there are three stories. There's Jason's story, the anthropologist. There's Gustavo, who's the Nicaraguan that got shot by Mexican police. And then there is like a mosaic portrait of many, I call it echoes of a bunch of group of Hondurans crossing, and they're never the same group. And yeah, I think to me, not only this film, but every film I do, I hang out. I try to go over there, I carry the camera on a tripod, and I sometimes go days without shooting anything. I just hang out. I did a film on the Amazon where I went 2 weeks without filming anything. I was just hanging out. So to me, that's important, just to get the feeling of the scene, and also get the feeling of the people, and also to let them know, so they know what I want, what I'm doing, so that we're all collaborating. And also, I feel also that in my approach, that's how a good way to get really good images, knowing that you're not going to get everything. So to me, hanging out is very important. So Jason, as an ethnographer, does the same. He hangs out a lot. So we hang out a lot. We hang out on the trails a lot. With Gustavo, we became really good friends. He got shot, so I was able to follow his story. Otherwise, it would have been very hard. And the echoes of the migrants, those are hard, because those migrants, many of them, some of them I found out where they are now, but many of them, some of them die, and some of them disappeared. So that's why I call them even echoes. Purposely, they're never the same person, just to show that this is just a lot of people doing this. And the humor, one of my favorite scenes is when they're on the shelter talking about a dog, and the dog poops on the person's shirt because he was somebody else. It's like, and obviously there's some kind of white shirt. Yeah, so that's the kind of a lot of that as much as possible. With Jason was a little, because Jason started more like the cocky ethnographer who's famous, and eventually his journey becomes like, shit, I cannot even find a body, even with all this, with all my knowledge and skills, I cannot find one body. So his journey becomes a little sad at the end, and that scene of the pig sort of becomes, it's like, although it is true, he's using that science to prove that there are more deaths in the desert. It's also a way for him to say, I'm not going to find this kid, and I need to do something. That's the best I can do, It's like, prove that there are more deaths. So his journey is a little bit of on the siding end at the end, but but he's part of the trail. He sort of becomes part of the trail, even with his privilege. He's Mexican American, but he's also a person that can travel like I can. So it was very interesting. But I'm good friends with Jason. We collaborate on another project that's his, but the film comes in and I help him a lot. And Gustavo, I'm in touch with Gustavo a lot. He's in Guatemala where the film ends. And I'm collaborating with his wife, with actually Rosy, who's in the film, about another film. And the other people that you see on the trail, they are just, I don't know. Many of them, I don't know what happened to them. I know some of them are dead. And some of them, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, he has a wonderful presence, and you can kind of really feel that. So when you show up, you just kind of hang out. You have your camera there, but you're not imposing on anyone. And I'm sure they ask you, "Pues qué haces?" Right? What are you doing? What do you tell them?
Well, it depends where you go, but in some places they're very used to cameras, just because Trump really made very popular what was happening there. So a lot of journalists and filmmakers were going there. Like when I started doing, there was Obama administration, and nobody was doing anything. Nobody cared. But Trump came in, and a lot of people started going in there. So they are used to cameras. They're used to a lot of news pieces from Europe, especially Europe covers them a lot. So they're used to that. What I was trying to, but there are things that you have to be careful. So yes, people ask you what you're doing and for what. One thing that you have to be careful is women and children, because on the trail, like I said, this trail is different than Europe. In Syria, the death is the Mediterranean. Probably Black Africans have it the worst because they have to cross the Sahara, Mediterranean, and racism. Here, yes, they do have a lot of nature, but there is also corruption in Mexico. There are a business that people want to take advantage of. So even local communities are trying to take advantage of them, and a lot more people disappear because of human activity than because of nature in Mexico. Like between 30,000 to 150,000. Those are nobody really knows because Mexico doesn't count the disappeared. But women are women and children. So when you film somebody, one thing that I got to know and that I learned from Jason, when you put the camera on someone on the trail that is not safe, you're pretty much saying, here is someone. And someone is watching. And if it's a person, if it's a woman, you're pretty much saying women don't want to be known when they're on the trail. So you're pretty much saying there's a woman here. And so I have to be very careful not to film women and children that much unless it was super safe. And that's pretty much on some shelters that I had a relationship for a long, long time. But
I wondered, I was going to ask you, are there women and children? Because the film, besides Rosy, I guess, is pretty much.
Well, Rosy's story, she's a fichera, and that's what the film that I want to work with her next. But in the trail, but I couldn't work that when I was trying to do that because ficheras get killed all the time in Mexico. I don't know if fichera is like not a prostitute, but it's like a person that works in a bar that entertains men. They could be prostitute or not, but that's what they do. And so she's one of those from Guatemala. But anyways, yes, it's very dangerous. You're something 5 miles later, they can. If you put a camera on, I have to be very conscious that somebody's watching. So that's one reason why I do have a lot of interviews with women that are made on the shelter and safety of the shelter and children. But those are more. I have another project that's called Journey Shorts where I'm inserting some of these interviews. But yeah, it's very dangerous in Mexico. Like I worked in another film. And the producer just came from filming in Syria, and she was filming in Mexico, and she's like, shit, what people go through Mexico makes people going through Syria like a vacation, they're camping,
really?
And they take photos. And Jason and I tried to give cameras to people in the south so they can film on the train their journey. And what will happen is that they will start in Chiapas, then in Veracruz, they will be stopped, and they're like, who gave you that camera? Ask them for $1,000. Who gave you that camera? So, or some of them will use it to mug people. They're like, oh shit, let's use them to identify people to be. So Mexico is nothing like there are a lot of components crossing through Mexico that other places don't have, and especially organized and unorganized crime is one that I have to be very mindful. I was very safe because they don't want to miss. Okay, so there is Mexicans from Mexico. There's Mexicans going there like I was, and then there is white journalists. So white journalists, I don't know you notice, but mostly people that cover this are white journalists that moved to Mexico. And that they are the safest because nobody wants to mess with them. But if you are like a Mexican or from there, that's when the toll of deaths of journalists happened in Mexico.
Right.
So they don't want to mess with you really on the trail because they don't want to mess with what is happening. I could leave my tripod and walk away and nobody will take it just because they don't want to mess with the system that they have. So it is, it's complex. So yes, yeah. So there are reasons, there are things that you have to keep in mind when you're filming. More than my safety is the safety of the people that were participating in the film.
So, what percentage would you say are women and children that you came across?
It changes. It changes year to year. And you know, I've been in panels where experts have come in that do this, all like Jason and other experts that do this a lot. And they talk about like on 2011, there was a lot of women and children coming in. 2014, when I was starting, there were a lot of women and children coming in. And then 2015, 2016, there were very few women and children. Right now, there is a lot of women and children. So it just varies. It's mostly men. It's always mostly men. But yeah, the women and children vary on year.
Did you ever feel in danger during this?
We got threatened.
5 years. Anything in particular?
We got threatened a few times in Chiapas by local gangs, but they just didn't want us there because we were being there for a long time. Since we were not like journalists that would go in there and leave, we were there for a long time. They will try to threaten us and scare us, but we knew they wouldn't do anything. In North Mexico, where I filmed with Gustavo and Rossi and Tamaulipas. We're filming there. That was more dangerous because when we were there, it was really hot. There were two cartels fighting for the town control, and it got really scary a few times there. But the garroteros also were scary, not to me, but to the photographer that I was working in there, because those garroteros, which are the police that shot Gustavo, those guys just didn't care, and they always covered their face. Yeah. They could get away with a lot, but I think northern Mexico, Tamaulipas was the most dangerous for me personally. But other than that, it was pretty not that dangerous.
Could you talk a little bit about the cartel? How are they involved with the migration?
I just don't know anymore. It's been a long time, and you didn't follow that thread. I mean, they are involved. They control routes, and it depends on the area. Each cartel controls different areas, but it's very complex. Mexico is very complex.
When you say they control routes, they determine who can make the journey, or
yeah.
What does that look like? What's it like?
It's it just changes through year. What the cartels did is that they destroyed the coyote, as traditional as it was. The coyote was someone from the town that will go there and then take people there because they've done the journey. And now they just made it that kind of coyote is disappearing because they control now the criminals, organized and non-organized, control it. Cartels change of leadership all the time, so the routes are shifting, and sometimes they work with the government. So it just depends who the cartel is controlling the area at the time.
So could you talk a little bit about how much footage did you shoot to end up with your 80 minutes?
I shot very little. I probably have 70 hours for 5 years. I don't shoot. I don't like shooting a lot, so I shoot very. I hate coming back and having to see a lot and then repeating the same shot over and over. That's one reason why. The other one is I just hang out a lot more than I shoot. But it was for 5 years. It was 70 hours. I've been in projects where they've done 3 years and they've done 1,000 to 2,000 hours. I didn't want that for any of my projects. I don't want that at all.
You like to edit.
Even if I don't edit, I know that I can work with an editor better when there is less footage, and I can think it's in my head. I can storyboard it better, and I'm on the point of view that you're always going to lose good stuff. So when you're ready, you shoot, and you get something there, and usually it's good.
How do you capture your audio?
Yeah, so audio was always very important to me. So
Yeah, you know, it really makes the trains a character in that. You know, it's the reoccurring of that. It's a very powerful sound.
No, the audio,
The audio design is wonderful.
Yeah, so the audio I brought, I always brought my boom and my Marantz and my boom pole, right? And I always, at the beginning when it was just me doing everything, the first 2 years probably, I will just take time to just get sound by myself. But then the last 3 years, I was lucky that the ethnographer that did the sound, who was also co-producer of the film, who was working in Mexico, he's a sound sensorial ethnographer, so he did a lot of the sound, and we even got the ants. And then even after all of that, it's the most expensive part of post-production was sound. We did it in Guadalajara in Mexico with a friend of mine, Odina Costa, and with him we spent 3 months doing sound with him in Guadalajara. So sound was very important because of the reason that you mentioned. We wanted the trail slowly, but by the end to have like a voice by the end.
Were you surprised when Gustavo decided to go back?
No, a lot of migrants go back. A lot of migrants go back and then try again.
It was so close. That's so poignant. You know them. You know he takes and shows her where you can see the American flag over there. It seems so possible. No, I mean so close.
Yeah, no,
it's a heartbreaking shot, kind of. You know.
Yeah, and yeah. So I wasn't really surprised, but I was, because at this point I know that a lot of migrants. I've been doing this for a long time, so I knew that a lot of migrants come back. But a lot of people do not know that about the trail. You know, everybody thinks it's a straight line. It's always zigzagging, going back, trying multiple times. A lot of people stay in Mexico now, and they stay more and more. So I wasn't surprised, but the audience usually is.
In Mexico more. Yeah.
I think I didn't hear the last one.
Are we good? Hello?
Hello.
We lost you for.
We lost. Who do we lose? Me?
Yeah, you went out for a little bit. If you can repeat the last question, he said he couldn't hear exactly what you were asking last.
I thought you were going. Here you are. Oh, please go. So you weren't. What is your message about the migrants? About this attempt and who they are as people. What is your message for audiences that we should understand about them?
Yeah, to me, the film, everybody gets something a little bit different. Sometimes it's very interesting. You mentioned the audience earlier, how the audience have received the film. And the film premiered in Sheffield, in Europe. And that was more like people asked more questions about, they did ask questions about migration and Trump because he was very popular, but it was more like about camera and angles and things like that. And then in the US, when he played in in New Orleans at the New Orleans Film Festival, we got a nonprofit that they paid for the they made it on a Sunday, and they paid for they made it free for everybody to come. And I used some money that I had because of that to publicize it, and I have a lot of family there too. So we packed it with mostly Central Americans, and it was New York, and those were nerve-wracking because I was like, oh shit, this is Central Americans. A lot of them undocumented, actually going to see the film, and the questions were awesome. And one of the things that they got were like a lot of people were remembering. They were like, oh, I went through that trail. I went to that shelter. And some people were crying. They were laughing at the jokes a lot more. A lot of people stay after the Q&A, and we talked with a lot of people, especially in New Orleans, where it was mostly Central Americans. There were grandmas with babies carrying, and the kids were crying. It was an awesome screening. So when you ask me about the audience, I feel like sometimes, when you're running grants to get money, sometimes, especially if you are like Latinx or people of person of color making a film, when the question comes in like, who's your audience? And I think the tendency is to go like educating white people, right? Educating the general public, which is usually white people. That's how I feel that people see things. I might be wrong, but in this film, my audience from the very beginning, I wanted it to be immigrants, Latinx, Central Americans, and that's really sad about COVID because we had a whole tour that we were going to do in Central America and Mexico last year, but into the American South, the South of the U.S., which still has a high percentage of Central Americans. And so my dad was very happy how the things that I wanted people to get, they got it naturally, and it was, and the conversation was more like them adding to it, like, oh, I did that, I was there. There are things I want to forget and make me remember, but it's good. All kinds of emotions were there, and because this is an observational film, there is no expert telling you what's going on. That's one of the critiques that I was getting with other places, even before the film was over. That people of color are not going to get this. Immigrants are not going to get this. And they got it. They love it. They were like, they love the storytelling. They were in it the whole time. And so to me, I mean, that was like a validation. So what I wanted to get is that those audiences film that care about the audio, care about protagonists. It's all brown protagonists. And so they care all about the spaces where they were crossing. And as a Latinx in the US that cares about showing the well-crafted film in that way, that didn't need an expert to tell you what's going on. You get it, right? So the patience of it. So I was very proud that those audiences got it. Some other audiences get it for different reasons, but that to me was what I got. I need to open the door. I'll be right back.
Okay. Molly, do you have any questions?
Sorry, it's just the COVID Zoom meetings.
Want to add?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was just wondering, you were talking about your time with RAP and Centro Humanitario, and I was wondering how that worked with you wanting to sort of make the film from a different perspective. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like those two collide pretty well.
Yeah, but nice to meet you, Molly, too. I've been emailing you back and forth. Thanks for all the emails and organizing. Yeah, well, so the one question came out one time in one festival was are you making an activist film? It's not an activist. It doesn't seem like an activist film, because it doesn't have the Michael Moore or a lot of the information. But it feels like it sort of has, like, the message obviously is that migrants are awesome, are ingenious, are intelligent, and that I'd rather have them as my neighbor than having all these racist people that have been emboldened lately. So that's sort of like what I want people to get, is like be familiar with the migrants. So I always see myself as an activist first before anything. I'm not a filmmaker activist. I'm an activist, and whatever else I do is whatever else I do. So when I work in construction, when I work clean out hotels in Aspen, or when I worked, like all the jobs that I had, or Centro Humanitario, I mean, those were activist jobs. But even the ones that weren't, I was always an activist first. And so I'm a filmmaker, I'm an activist, and then a filmmaker. And I think that has to do a lot with those Black experience and Centro Humanitario and RAP. Before that, I was also an organizer at Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, where I made my first film. And so it was like community organizing, I think, taught me that being an activist is not something that's extra, but is what is the first thing. And so, yeah, I think that's definitely, here in RAP, that's how I met my wife. We work in Aurora organizing racial profile campaigns. And in Centro Humanitario, I work with the day laborers, mostly in Aurora as well. And there's a film actually about my work. No, I didn't do it, but it's about the work we were doing there. I thought it was pretty good. But anyways, it definitely influenced how I approach things in general. I think that was a life-changing experience in general. One thing that I did learn filmmaking is that sometimes, I don't think that's the same, but there was a movement at the beginning when nonprofits were trying to find out how to use media, and they could be very paternalistic, very like protect my base, protect. And I think to me that was hurting when I was seeing that. That was hurting the same people that we were working with, and we were, instead of like just letting them be themselves. I mean, we live on the gray, right? Where we are funny, we go through hard things, we could be bad, but that's not what defines all of those makes us who we are. So the great, I mean, in the film, you obviously have the kids doing the tattoos. Those are kids that will never gonna get documents in the US, right? And because of that, they're gonna go back and die over there. One of them died. So it's, I just love the gray, and I feel like sometimes nonprofits, activist organizations shy from the gray, and I feel that that's a disservice to us as who we are. So that's one thing I learned that's why I don't work with nonprofits directly, like to hand, because I want to have that control of showing, especially if it's my community, is showing the gray.
How would you compare how Americans are responding, or this time that we're at, in terms of Black Lives Matter, and I've been really intrigued by the court case, and for the first time seeing that police are breaking the code, and actually admitting. Do you see a new opening happening? Is that gaining strength? And how does that compare with Mexico and the changes that they're experience, and kind of the public perspective? Is it changing? Are we making progress?
Alani and I are actually working on a film about transformative justice in Colorado, and we've just got access to the 22 correctional facilities here in the state, and we're probably, as soon as we get our second vaccine, we're going to be able to go and start filming, because Colorado is doing some interesting things. I don't know. I mean, that's a question, like, maybe it's a reaction to what Trump did right now, and we're a little bit more progressive. But, I feel like we get sold out all the time, especially by Democrats. And they are like us for when they need us. And then, especially Latinx, we voted for another candidate on the primaries, and another candidate won. So I don't know. It's politics. Mexican politics is not that complex like the U.S. I would say Mexican politics is rooted on colonialism and on complex of inferiority. I would say, like, I was growing up in Mexico, working class. My father is indigenous, and I was like never proud of that until I came to the U.S. and I saw the Chicano movement. So it is. In Mexico, it's a lot of that. When Trump became president, a lot of Mexicans even though those that were very progressive, start taking a lot of his talking points towards immigration. I mean, one of the shelters that I filmed is closed now because those people became very anti-immigrant. I just don't know. I don't think I'm as an artist, I just try to show films that we can relate and talk about it. I think the question that you ask is pretty big, and we can just have, maybe there's another platform where we can talk more about that, but I'm not an expert on that field. But those are my thoughts.
Yeah, it's hard to analyze the psychology of a whole country. But I think there, are some changes. For me, letters, I was to Zócalo in probably like 20 years. And the last time I had been there, the focus was really the cathedral. And you could almost feel the vibes, were really kind of subdued and stuff. It was still a wonderful experience, and, and very rich. But last year when I was there, man, it was like, the Templo Mayor has taken that interest. So now the cathedral is like kind of the second thought, right? And everything's directed for the Templo and then the Museo there, right? And then, of course, the danzantes start on Friday morning, and they continue. It's almost nonstop danzante until, for the whole weekend. And the vibe in the Zócalo seemed so much different. There was so much more emphasis, on the indigenous character then was I just imagining that? I mean, as I don't know, something that I wanted to see, kind of an experience, because for me it was really very, very obvious. I'd only heard the things and heard things on the media about Mexico and through relatives, primarily. My wife is a Veracruzana, right, from familia and stuff, but it just seemed very different, I thought, in terms of that.
I always saw that in that area that you're talking about. They always have danzantes there. You probably drawn. It just depends what you're looking for. When you go to Mexico, you look for the Mexico you want to find. If you are, I was looking for migrants and their experience, but there's definitely a lot of indigenous people out there and struggling. A lot of great films coming up. So and maybe you, growing up here as a Chicano, you probably have that mentality. You want to highlight that it's there because it's there. So you find the Mexico you want to find. And Mexico has all of that stuff, and it's always been there. So it's not like I personally see those danzantes all the time, but maybe that's because I look for them. I also go to areas that like El Mercado de Sonora is one place that I always go, even though it's disgusting. And for now with COVID, I probably would never go again. But I like that place, and I wanted to make a film there. I don't know. You go in Mexico, you find the Mexico you want to find, because it's just all kinds of things. But I think that's good that you see that, though. That's the things that we should highlight too, instead of other things.
Would you be thinking of doing a sequel, maybe, or covering that project again?
I'm doing another film in Kentucky, which is about the migrant labor force behind the Derby. That is the documentary that I'm working right now, is the next feature. And then I have a film that's about the Black African experience through the Americas, because I met many Africans when I was doing Border South. And that one, I mean, with COVID, that is a big project, because that will take Africa, South America, Ecuador, Central America, and I will probably end it in Mexico. But I don't know if I have right now, I just want to make a film that I have a little bit more control. So the Derby and the migrant experience and the Derby is the one that I'm working on right now. But yes, I do want to do that one. And the one with Rosy, which is one about ficheras, I'm still trying to figure out how to do that.
Hey, Raul, sorry, we don't have that much left, and we haven't talked about Night Shift, so I want to make sure that we get that in there. Can you tell us a little bit about that film?
Yes, I don't know how much Alan talked about it. Night Shift started because Latino Public Broadcast contacted me to do a film about Latinos as essential workers in the U.S. And I was looking to do actually the crews that clean the emergency rooms during COVID. But it was really hard to get access to the emergency room. So Alan and I started talking through COVID more than before. And I told him what I was doing. And he's like, well, let's see who I know. And he came back with 5 names. And one name was Dulce. And he told me what Dulce was doing. And I was like, man, this Dulce sounds really good. Let's contact her. And Dulce opened her story really quickly. We got access to the company really fast. And in a month, we got all the footage that you saw. Obviously, we follow COVID protocols to get all that footage. And now we're making a longer piece of 30 minutes about Dulce, because she's amazing, and she is talking about the Mexican experience of, I consider the Colorado the Southwest, of this part of the Southwest. Dulce and her best friend who live together, Jasmine, are just amazing. And we want to follow that story a little more of young Latinx growing up in this part of the country, in Colorado and Denver. And we've been filming her ever since. So we're still working on that. So anyways, Night Shift came out about to show us Latinos are essential for Latino Public Broadcast. And we had a great time filming that. It was just really great working with Dulce, and so that's why we're expanding it. And I think everything is in the film that is for that film. But one thing that is not so much in the film is a lot of mental health issues of the Latinx community, which is something that we're going to explore on the longer piece with Dulce. Suicide, a lot of things that had happened because of COVID, and a lot of things that we don't talk in our communities, maybe in my age, because it's taboo. So we want to expand on that a lot more on that film. But it was awesome, and I wish we should have got Dulce on on a Q&A, because maybe when we got the longer piece, we get her on a Q&A.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. When you finish the longer one, let's have her on.
What I was going to say about that is nice. Great to film in Colorado and working with Alan. So we've been having a lot of fun doing this film.
So where do you feel most at home?
That's very interesting you asked the question, because that's the films that I usually do. Sort of all of my films somehow have that topic in home or the absence of home. The one I did in Pine Ridge sort of touches about that. The one I did in the Amazon is called Home. And those are more of coming of a jealousy perspective, because indigenous people are so rooted on the land, especially the ones I was filming. And then there is that immigrants of where I belong, right? So yeah, Colorado is home because my family's here, I guess. But when I grew up here as an immigrant, I didn't feel at home many times. So I think that's one thing I explore in my films. What is it to belong or not belong? And that's something that's becoming apparent as I make more films. That's an exploration. So I think as I make more films, I'll be able to answer that question. Maybe I'll answer it in a film. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell, like there was a time when I filmed mostly from Chihuahua. And then there's a time when I filmed mostly from Colorado, from the mountains where I grew up in Carbondale. And then in New York, sometimes I miss it. Being here, it's just, I don't know, I'm exploring that. So I would say Colorado now because I'm here and most of my family's here. But that's a question that I deal with, just being a migrant living on the diaspora.
Bueno, you're so welcome here.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad that this is becoming your home, or
yeah. I mean, I think we're staying here.
Important part of it, and very excited about seeing more and more of your work. These projects sound really wonderful.
Yes, and we hope you consider continuing to submit with us. I'm excited to hear about the other projects, the longer pieces that you have, and also the work that you're doing now in Kentucky, I think you said?
Yeah, Louisville for the Derby.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there we go. Yes. Well, I really want to thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you, and especially for getting a chance to talk about Night Shift. Thank you, Molly, for making sure we cover both films. And I want to make sure that we remind everybody to keep coming back to our events. We have our next event will be Thursday, April 15th at 6:30 p.m., where we have Cine Mexicano Platica with the Consul General of Mexico. We'll also save the date, May 16th, where we will be having a virtual cooking class. Details are forthcoming. You'll be able to sign up for all of our events, as well as the 7th ever WordFest at www.suteatro.org. Molly, I'll hand it over to you to go ahead and wrap this up.
Just want to remind you about our internship. You can head over to www.suteatro.org. You can find our application there, send it to your high schooler, and have them turn it in by April 18th. And I want to thank again our XicanIndie collaborators, KUVO 89.3 FM, Rocky Mountain PBS, the Consulate General of Mexico, and Media Arts Santa Ana. Thank you so much, Raul and Daniel, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Raul, we have to get together.
Yeah, let's get together.
Ellen, so